The moment the family security footage played on the massive screen in the living room, Grant's heart stopped cold. There he was, locked in a passionate kiss with Xavier, his adoptive brother. And in that single revelation, the wealthy Harrington empire began to crumble under the weight of their hidden gay love. The footage looped once more, the timestamp glowing like an accusation. 11:47 p.m. last night. Richard Harrington paused the video, his jaw tight, while Elena pressed a trembling hand to her pearls. The opulent living room, usually filled with laughter and the clink of crystal, now felt like a courtroom. Grant stood frozen near the grand piano, the same one where he and Xavier had played duets as teenagers. At 24, Grant had grown into the man the Harringtons always hoped he would become: polished, grateful, reliable. But gratitude had never prepared him for this. It had started so quietly. 10 years earlier, a social worker had driven a scared foster kid through the iron gates of the Los Angeles estate. Richard and Elena, unable to have more children after Xavier, saw something in Grant's quiet eyes that reminded them of the son they already loved. Papers were signed, rooms redecorated, and suddenly Grant Harrington existed. Xavier, then 11, had offered his hand on the marble staircase. "You're my brother now. We stick together." They had, through private schools, summer camps in Aspen, European tours on the family jet. They shared secrets, clothes, even the occasional fistfight over video games. No one ever questioned how close they were. But closeness had changed 2 years ago. It was during a trip to the family vineyard in Napa. Xavier had turned 23, Grant 22. One late night on the porch under strings of fairy lights, Xavier had confessed he couldn't stop thinking about Grant. Not as a brother. The words hung between them like smoke. Grant remembered the way his pulse had raced, how he had whispered back, "Me neither." From that night forward, their love lived in stolen moments. Quiet drives along the Pacific Coast Highway, locked office doors at headquarters, whispered promises in the pool house after midnight. They told themselves it was safe. They weren't blood. They were careful. Until they weren't. Now Richard's voice cut through the silence. "Explain this." It wasn't a question. Xavier stepped forward, shoulders squared the way he did in board meetings. "Dad, we're in love. It's real. We didn't plan it." Elena's sob broke the air. "Love? You're brothers." Grant felt the word like a slap. He wanted to shout that adoption didn't erase who they were, but his throat closed. Instead, he watched his mother's face crumble, the woman who had taught him to tie a tie, who had cried at his college graduation. The argument stretched into the afternoon. Servants were dismissed. Phones were silenced. Richard paced, listing every risk: the business partners, the charity boards, the country club gossip. "This family has a name to protect." Grant listened, each word chipping away at the security he had known for 14 years. He remembered the first time he had called Richard Dad, how the man had pulled him into a hug so tight it hurt. Now that same man looked at him like a stranger. By sunset, the house felt smaller. Xavier found Grant on the balcony overlooking the infinity pool. "We'll fix this," Xavier said, reaching for his hand. Grant pulled away, the gesture feeling like betrayal itself. "How? They gave me everything. I owe them." Xavier's eyes darkened. "You owe yourself too." The words lingered as the city lights flickered on below. Grant stared at the horizon, wondering if love was worth losing the only home he had ever known. Inside, Elena sat alone in the library, flipping through old photo albums. Pictures of the boys at Disneyland, at the beach, at prom. She stopped on one of them arm in arm at high school graduation. Tears blurred the images. She had always sensed something deeper but told herself it was brotherly. Now the truth stared back, and she didn't know which hurt more, the lie or the love. Down the hall, Richard poured scotch and called his lawyer. "We need damage control." The word damage landed like gravel in Grant's chest when he overheard it. He slipped into the guest room that had once been his childhood sanctuary, closed the door, and let the first tears fall. The boy who had been rescued now felt like the one destroying everything. Outside, the Pacific wind rattled the windows, carrying the distant sound of waves. It was only the beginning. Grant woke the next morning to an empty house. Xavier had left a note on the kitchen island. "Meet me at the overlook at noon. We need to talk alone." He dressed quickly, avoiding the staff's curious glances. Driving the winding canyon road, Grant replayed every moment that led here. The way Xavier's laugh still made his stomach flip. The way their fingers fit perfectly when no one was watching. Love had felt like freedom until it became a cage. At the overlook, Xavier waited by the railing, wind tugging his dark hair. The city sprawled below like a promise they might never keep. "I told them I'm not giving you up," Xavier said. Grant's chest tightened. "And I told myself I'd never hurt them." They stood in silence, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Below, traffic moved on, oblivious. Grant reached out, and this time he didn't pull away. Their hands met, a small rebellion against the storm gathering at home. But even as they stood together, Grant felt the ground shifting beneath them. The family that had saved him was fracturing, and he was the crack. The drive back was quiet. When they pulled into the driveway, Sophia, Xavier's younger cousin who had been staying for the summer, waited on the steps. Her eyes were wide. "Uncle Richard wants everyone in the study. Now." Grant's stomach dropped. The confrontation was far from over. Sophia's voice trembled as she led them inside. The study smelled of leather and old books, the same room where Richard had once taught them how to read stock reports. Today it felt like an interrogation chamber. Richard stood behind the mahogany desk, Elena beside him, her eyes red but steady. Sophia hovered near the door, caught between loyalty and shock. "We've decided," Richard began, voice clipped. "This cannot continue under our roof. Not while it risks everything we built." Xavier's hand found Grant's under the table, a silent anchor. Grant squeezed back, drawing strength from the warmth. "Dad, we're adults. This isn't a phase." Elena spoke softly. "We love you both, but the world won't see it that way. The board meets next month. Investors are already whispering." Grant listened, the old fear rising, the fear of being sent back to a system that had once failed him. He remembered the group home, the uncertainty, the nights wondering if anyone would ever choose him again. The Harringtons had chosen him. Now he felt like he was forcing them to unchoose. "I'll leave," he said suddenly. The words surprised even him. Xavier turned sharply. "No," but Grant kept going. "I can find an apartment. Keep my distance. Maybe that gives everyone space." Richard's expression softened for the first time. "We don't want that, son." The word son cracked something inside Grant. Elena stepped forward. "We need time. All of us." Sophia finally spoke. "I won't say anything," but the staff saw the footage too. Rumors spread fast in this town. The warning hung heavy. Los Angeles society was small, especially at the top. That afternoon, Grant packed a suitcase. Xavier watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "You're running." Grant zipped the bag. "I'm protecting what's left." They argued in hushed tones, old hurts surfacing. Xavier accused him of always putting the family first. Grant shot back that Xavier had never known what it was like to lose everything. The words stung, but they were honest. By evening, Grant was gone, checking into a downtown hotel with a view of the skyline that suddenly felt cold. Alone, he stared at his phone. Messages from Xavier flooded in. "Come home. We'll face it together." Grant typed and deleted 3 replies before setting the phone aside. Instead, he opened his laptop and began updating his resume. If he was going to stand on his own, he needed a plan. The charity work he did for the Harrington Foundation could translate elsewhere. But every line reminded him of the life he was leaving. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Xavier confronted his parents again. "He's gone because of us." Elena hugged him. "We're trying, sweetheart. This is new territory." Richard poured drinks. "Your mother and I talked. We don't understand it, but we don't hate you. Either of you." The admission was small, but it was something. Xavier felt a flicker of hope. Yet when he called Grant later, the line went to voicemail. The next days blurred. Grant attended a foundation meeting via video, keeping his voice steady, while colleagues asked about family matters. He met an old college friend for coffee, someone who had come out years earlier. "It gets better," the friend said. "But you have to choose yourself first." The words echoed as Grant walked the busy streets, anonymous among strangers. For the first time, he wondered what his life would look like without the Harrington name. Xavier threw himself into work, staying late at headquarters. But every empty desk reminded him of Grant. One night he drove to the hotel, knocking until Grant opened the door. They stood there inches apart. "I missed you," Xavier whispered. They didn't kiss. Not yet. Instead they talked until sunrise, about fears, about futures, about what love really cost. When Xavier left at dawn, Grant felt lighter. But relief was short-lived. Sophia called at noon. Someone leaked a still from the footage to a gossip site. It's blurry, but people are connecting dots. Grant's blood ran cold. The story was spreading. He opened his laptop and saw the headline, "Harrington Heirs' Shocking Secret." No names, but enough to ignite whispers. That evening, Grant returned home. The family gathered again, this time with lawyers present. Damage control plans were laid out, statements, charity events, image rehab. Grant listened, but something had shifted inside him. He was no longer the grateful boy. He was a man in love, and he was tired of hiding. "I won't lie anymore," he said quietly. The room fell silent. Xavier smiled across the table, proud and scared all at once. The meeting ended with cautious agreements. Therapy for everyone. Time. But outside, the city lights glittered, and Grant knew the real battle had just begun. The gossip site story gained traction by morning. Phones buzzed across the Harrington offices. Colleagues offered sympathetic nods that felt more like judgment. Grant kept his head down, focusing on grant proposals, but every email carried an undercurrent. "Is everything okay at home?" one board member asked during a call. Grant smiled through the screen. "Never better." The lie tasted bitter. Xavier faced it differently. At the gym, his usual workout partners avoided eye contact. One old friend pulled him aside. "Dude, if it's true, you know I support you, right?" The half-hearted support stung more than outright rejection. Back home, Elena tried cooking family dinners again, but conversation stayed surface level. Richard buried himself in contracts, occasionally asking Grant for input on the latest deal as if nothing had changed. Sophia became the unexpected bridge. She cornered Grant in the kitchen one night. "I saw how you two look at each other. It's real. Don't let them make you doubt that." Her words gave him courage. That night he and Xavier sat by the pool, feet in the water. "Maybe we tell the truth publicly," Xavier suggested. Grant shook his head. "Not yet. I need to figure out who I am without the money, without the name." Xavier nodded, but worry creased his brow. The first real test came at the annual gala. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns. Grant wore the tux Elena had picked, Xavier matching beside him. Cameras flashed as they posed with the family. Whispers followed them like shadows. "Is it true? Look at them." Grant's hand brushed Xavier's accidentally, and he pulled back as if burned. Later, in a quiet corner, Xavier whispered, "Dance with me." They didn't. Not there. But the restraint hurt. After the event, tension boiled over in the limo. Richard snapped, "You two need to be more careful." Grant's temper flared. "Careful? We've been careful our whole lives. I'm done hiding who I love." The words hung. Elena reached for his hand. "We're learning, Grant. Give us time." The ride home was silent. The next week brought a new complication. Grant's biological mother, long out of his life, saw the rumors and reached out via email. "I saw the news. If you need a place, my door is open." The message reopened old wounds. Grant stared at the screen for hours. Xavier found him in the study. "You don't owe her anything." But the doubt lingered. Was he running from one family to another? They spent a weekend at the beach house to escape. No staff, no cameras. For 2 days they were just Grant and Xavier, cooking, swimming, talking until their voices grew hoarse. On the second night, Under a blanket of stars, Xavier said, "Marry me when this settles." Grant laughed through tears. "You're crazy." But the idea planted itself. The future. Their future. Monday brought reality. The foundation lost a major donor citing family values concerns. Richard called an emergency meeting. "We need to distance the narrative." Grant felt the words like a door closing. That night he packed again, this time for a small apartment in Silver Lake. Xavier helped carry boxes. "This isn't goodbye," he promised. Grant nodded, but as the door closed behind him, loneliness settled in. His new place was modest, exposed brick, one bedroom. He bought a cheap coffee maker and sat on the floor eating takeout. For the first time, he felt free and terrified. The next morning, he started a new job at a small LGBTQ youth center, using skills from the foundation. The work felt honest. Kids who reminded him of his younger self looked up at him with hope. Xavier visited every evening. They cooked together in the tiny kitchen, laughing when things burned. One night Grant said, "I think I'm figuring out who I am." Xavier kissed him softly. "I've always known." But outside, the world kept turning. A tabloid printed a clearer photo. Comments flooded social media, some supportive, many cruel. Grant read them late at night, chest tight. Elena called. "Come for dinner. Just us." He went. The table felt different, smaller, more honest. Richard raised a glass. "To family, whatever that looks like now." The toast was awkward but real. Sophia texted later, "Proud of you. Small steps but steps." Yet cracks remained. At work, a coworker asked if Grant was the guy from the news. He answered honestly. The conversation spread. Some parents pulled their kids from programs. Grant's boss pulled him aside. "We support you, but optics," the pattern repeated. Love had consequences. One rainy evening Xavier arrived soaked. "I told the board I'm stepping back if they force us apart." Grant pulled him inside. They stood dripping on the hardwood, holding each other. "You don't have to choose," Grant whispered. Xavier smiled. "I already did." The rain pounded the windows as they talked long into the night. Grant realized the journey wasn't about losing a family. It was about building one on his own terms. But the path ahead still held shadows. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday. Xavier spent the week preparing, rehearsing arguments in the mirror while Grant listened from the couch. "They can't fire me for who I love," Xavier said. Grant wanted to believe it. Thursday night, they stayed up late, mapping worst-case scenarios. If Xavier lost his position, they could move, start fresh. The idea both excited and scared them. Friday arrived with clear skies. Xavier kissed Grant goodbye at the apartment door. "Whatever happens, we're in this." Grant spent the day at the youth center, helping teens with college applications. Their stories mirrored his own: rejection, fear, hope. One boy confided he was gay and scared to tell his parents. Grant shared just enough of his story to give courage. "Sometimes the family you choose is stronger." The words felt true. At 5 o'clock his phone rang. Xavier's voice was tight. "They voted. I keep my title, but with conditions. No public statements. No joint appearances for 6 months." Grant closed his eyes. "Conditions?" Xavier laughed bitterly. "Better than nothing." They met at a quiet diner. Over burgers Xavier admitted the real cost. Richard had pushed the hardest. He said, "It's for the company." But I saw his face. He's ashamed. Grant reached across the table. "We'll prove him wrong." The next weeks tested them. Paparazzi camped outside the mansion. Grant's apartment became a sanctuary, but isolation crept in. He missed Sunday brunches, the easy rhythm of family life. Elena texted daily recipes and heart emojis. Richard sent work updates, impersonal but consistent. Sophia visited with wine and gossip, keeping the bridge open. A new crisis hit when Grant's biological mother showed up at the youth center. She looked older, tired. "I saw the news. I want to make amends." Grant's hands shook. They talked in his office for an hour. She apologized for the past, for the drugs, for giving him up. Grant listened, But the old pain didn't vanish. "I have a family," he said finally. "One that chose me." She left with tears, promising to stay in touch if he wanted. That night he told Xavier, "I think I forgave her a little." Xavier held him. "That's growth." Work pressure mounted. The center's funding dipped. Grant wrote new grant proposals, pouring his story into them. Surprisingly, several foundations responded positively to the authenticity. One donor even cited his courage. Small wins stacked. Xavier's conditions chafed. At a company retreat he attended alone, colleagues asked about the situation. He answered honestly. The honesty spread. A few allies emerged, younger executives who respected the stand. Richard noticed. One evening he called Grant directly. "Your work at the center is impressive. Maybe there's a way to partner." The olive branch felt fragile but real. Summer brought heat and change. Xavier moved a few boxes into Grant's apartment. Not full commitment yet, but closer. They cooked, argued over playlists, built routines. One weekend they drove to Big Sur, hiking trails where no one knew their names. On a cliff overlooking the ocean, Xavier dropped to one knee. "Not official yet. But when the world catches up, will you marry me?" Grant laughed through happy tears. "Yes." The ring was simple, hidden in his pocket for now. Back in the city, reality waited. A major investor threatened to pull out unless the family image stabilized. Richard called a dinner. The table was set for 5, Grant included. Conversation stayed light until dessert. Richard cleared his throat. "I've been wrong about some things. I still don't understand, but I see how you two look at each other. That's real." Elena nodded, eyes shining. "We want you both home for holidays. No conditions." The words landed softly. Grant felt the knot in his chest loosen. Yet not everything healed overnight. A tabloid published more photos. Online trolls targeted the youth center. Grant faced a board of his own. "We need you to keep a low profile." He refused. "These kids need someone who's lived it." The center stood by him. Support poured in from unexpected places. Strangers, alumni, even a celebrity donor. Xavier's company faced its own backlash. A conservative client canceled a multimillion-dollar deal. Xavier worked longer hours, proving his value. Late one night, he came home exhausted. Grant had dinner waiting. They ate in silence until Xavier said, "I'm proud of us." Grant smiled. "Me too." The turning point arrived unexpectedly. Sophia organized a small gathering at the mansion, close friends, no press. Grant and Xavier arrived together. For the first time they held hands openly in front of family. No one flinched. Richard raised a toast. To new beginnings. The clink of glasses sounded like hope. But one guest, a longtime business associate, pulled Grant aside. "You're brave, but some doors will close forever." Grant met his eyes. "Others will open." The exchange lingered, but he refused to let fear win. As summer faded, Grant stood on his balcony watching the city lights. Xavier stepped behind him, arms around his waist. "We made it this far." Grant leaned back. "And we're just getting started." The future still held questions, but for the first time, they faced them together. Fall brought crisp air and new routines. Grant's apartment slowly filled with Xavier's things: books, workout gear, a second coffee mug. They argued over closet space and laughed about it. The youth center thrived under new funding Grant had secured. Kids looked to him as proof that life could improve. One teen, Marcus, reminded Grant so much of himself that he started a weekly mentoring group. Sharing his story helped both the boys and Grant heal old wounds. At the mansion, Sunday dinners became regular. Elena experimented with recipes, asking Grant's opinion on spices. Richard discussed business without the old tension. One evening he pulled Grant aside. "I was scared of losing the company. More scared of losing my sons." "I'm sorry." The apology was simple, but it mended something deep. Grant hugged him, something he hadn't done in months. Xavier's company stabilized. The board voted to expand diversity initiatives, citing internal change. Xavier led the effort, traveling to conferences and speaking quietly about inclusion. Each speech chipped away at the old silence. Grant attended one in San Francisco. Watching Xavier command the stage filled him with pride. Afterward, they walked the foggy streets, hands linked openly. No cameras, just them. A new challenge surfaced when Grant's biological mother called again. She was sick and asked to meet. Grant drove to her small apartment in the valley. They talked for hours. She shared stories of her struggles, her regrets. Grant listened without judgment. When he left, he promised to stay in touch. The visit brought closure he hadn't known he needed. Back home, he told Xavier everything. They sat on the couch, legs tangled. "You're stronger than you know," Xavier said. Grant smiled. "We both are." That night they planned a small trip, just the two of them, to the vineyard where it all began. The trip felt like coming full circle. At the vineyard, memories flooded back. They walked the same paths, sat on the same porch. Under the same fairy lights, Xavier slipped the ring onto Grant's finger. No more waiting. Grant kissed him, the moment simple and perfect. They called the family that night. Elena cried happy tears. Richard offered the jet for a honeymoon whenever they wanted. Sophia screamed with joy. The engagement stayed private for now. They wanted time before the world weighed in again. But secrets had a way of surfacing. A photographer caught them at a quiet cafe. The photo went viral with the headline "Harrington heirs engaged?" Comments mixed: support, hate, curiosity. Grant read a few, then closed the tab. Let them talk. Xavier agreed. Work continued. Grant was promoted at the center to program director. The role let him shape policy, helping more kids like him. Xavier balanced company duties with advocacy. They supported each other through long days and late nights. One evening, Xavier came home with flowers. "For the man who changed everything." Grant laughed. "You changed me first." Holidays approached. The family planned a quiet Thanksgiving at the mansion. Grant helped in the kitchen, chopping vegetables beside Elena. Laughter filled the rooms. Richard carved the turkey, toasting to "the family we chose and the family that chose us." The words settled warmly, yet external pressure lingered. An investor group demanded a statement distancing the company from personal matters. Xavier refused. The standoff risked millions. Grant supported him fully. "We stand together." They prepared for the worst, updated resumes, talked budgets. But the board ultimately backed Xavier. The investor walked away, but new partners emerged who valued authenticity. Christmas brought snow to the mountains. The family rented a cabin. Grant and Xavier sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets. Xavier traced the ring on Grant's finger. "Next year, married." Grant nodded. "Next year." The promise felt solid. New Year's Eve they attended a small party with friends from the center. No press, just joy. At midnight they kissed as fireworks lit the sky. Grant felt the weight of the past year lift. He had faced rejection, loss, doubt. He had grown. But growth wasn't linear. In February, a tabloid dug up old Foster records, twisting facts. The story painted Grant as opportunistic. Comments flooded again. For 2 days he stayed offline. Xavier stayed close. "They don't know you." Elena called daily. Richard offered lawyers. The support reminded Grant he wasn't alone. Slowly the noise faded. Grant spoke at a conference about adoption and identity. His voice steady, he shared pieces of his journey. The audience listened. Afterward, young men approached, thanking him. The moment crystallized everything. Spring bloomed. Wedding planning began quietly. Small venue, close friends, family. No spotlight, just love. Grant stood on the apartment balcony one morning, coffee in hand, watching the city wake. Xavier joined him. "Ready for forever?" Grant smiled. "I've been ready." The path had been painful, but every step had led here. Wedding plans moved forward in secret. They chose a private garden venue overlooking the ocean. Just 30 guests. Elena handled flowers. Richard offered his vintage car for the drive. Sophia designed simple invitations. Grant and Xavier wrote their own vows late at night, laughing over inside jokes and tearing up over promises. 2 weeks before the date, A final storm hit. A major media outlet wanted an exclusive. Refusing risked more rumors. After long talks, they agreed to one interview on their terms. The journalist was respectful. Grant spoke about adoption, identity, love. Xavier talked about courage and family evolution. The piece ran with a headline that surprised them: "Love that redefined a dynasty." Positive coverage followed. Sponsors returned. The youth center received record donations. The night before the wedding, Grant stayed at the mansion. Xavier at the apartment. Tradition. Elena sat with Grant on the balcony. "I'm so proud of the man you became." Grant hugged her. "Thank you for choosing me." Richard joined them. "You've taught me more than any business school." The words healed old scars. Dawn broke clear. Grant dressed in a navy suit, Xavier in charcoal. They met at the garden, eyes locking across the aisle. Vows were spoken under an arch of white roses. "I choose you every day," Grant said. "Through storms and sun," Xavier replied. Rings exchanged. The kiss was soft, real, witnessed. Applause rose. The reception was intimate. Laughter, dancing, toasts. Richard raised his glass. "To my sons, both of them." Elena cried happy tears. Sophia played DJ. Marcus from the center gave a speech about hope. The night ended with fireworks over the water. Months later, they bought a house in the hills. Modest by Harrington standards, but theirs. Grant continued at the center, now expanding programs nationwide. Xavier balanced business with advocacy, launching a foundation for LGBTQ youth in foster care. They traveled, hosted dinners, built a life. One evening on their patio, Xavier asked, "Any regrets?" Grant shook his head. Every hard day led here. They watched the sunset, hands linked. The city hummed below, but their world felt complete. Years passed. The family grew closer. Holidays, birthdays, quiet nights. Grant's biological mother visited once, meeting the family. Healing continued in layers. Society changed slowly around them. More couples like theirs found acceptance. Grant stood on the same balcony where the journey began, now with a different view. Xavier stepped behind him. "Still happy?" Grant turned, smiling. "Happier than I ever imagined." The story wasn't perfect. Scars remained. But love had won. True or false? Blood is always thicker than the love two men build when the world tries to tear them apart.